Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our public planning hearing for Monday, June 27th, 2022. We have three files this evening, Hill, Batchelor, and GH1 Developments Incorporated. We'll call this meeting to order, and I'll ask if there's any declaration of pecuniary interest. Okay, I'm not seeing one, but I will be declaring conflict on the second file, Z19 2022 for Batchelor, as the applicants are my wife's aunt and uncle. Okay, this public meeting was called under Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, concerning two proposed zoning bylaw amendments to Bylaw 2004-50 and two official plan amendments. Any person or public body is entitled to attend the public meeting and make written or oral submissions in support of or in opposition to any of the proposed amendments. Written comments should be submitted to the planning department. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council of the municipality of Grey Highlands to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And in addition, they may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. It is important to note that if you wish to be mailed a notice of the passage of the bylaw and/or notice of decision, and you do not live within 120 meters of the subject property, you must provide your request in writing to the planning department of the municipality of Grey Highlands. Registering for this virtual meeting does not represent your written request. A guideline sheet is available upon request. The first file is Official Plan Amendment OP03 2022. The registered owner is Wayne Hill. The legal description is the west half lot 6, Concession 9, Euphrasia, Municipality of Grey Highlands, with a civic address of 565446 Side Road 7A. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on May 18th, 2022 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. I will now have our planner review the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and advise of comments received. Planner Radke, please.
Thank you. The proposal is to sever a lot that is 43.6 hectares into two lots that are both roughly 21.8 hectares. The subject property is part of an original 80-hectare parcel. The proposed lot creation will bring the total number of lots within the original 80-hectare parcel to 6, whereas the Grey Highlands official plan permits a total parcel density of 5. The Grey County official plan permits a maximum parcel density of 6 lots per original 80-hectare lot. The proposed official plan amendment is to allow the additional lot in alignment with the county plan. The accompanying consent application has been received by the municipality. The official plan amendment will be processed in advance of the consent application. Provided the official plan amendment is approved, a notice of meeting related to the consent application will be circulated at a later date in advance of the related public meeting. I will go to some comments received. Grey County Planning, a summary of their comments, provided that comments are received from SVCA regarding the hazard lands and the natural heritage features. County planning staff have no further concerns with the subject application. There's a long version of their comments attached to the report. Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, again, there's a long version of their comments attached to the report, and the summary of their comments is that the application is considered acceptable by SVCA staff. Grey Highlands Transportation commented an entrance permit has been obtained for the entrance into the retained parcel. No further comments or concerns at this time from transportation. Just for everyone watching, that's a process by which an applicant who wants to sever goes and applies for kind of a pretend or ghost permit from the transportation department ahead of the severance being granted to confirm that there won't be any sightline issues. That permit wouldn't be eligible until the lot is severed. If it is severed, then that permit issuance still stands. So they noted that there's no sightline concerns or anything there. Grey Highlands Building Services, any future development on the retained parcel will require a building permit and must conform to the requirements in the Ontario Building Code at the time of permit submission. I will leave it at that until there's questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or discussion from council members? Okay, seeing none. If the applicant or agent is present and you would like to make representation on your application, please identify yourself by stating your name for the record. I see the Ron Davidson is the agent for Wayne Hill.
I do not see Ron in attendance. So if there's somebody wanting to speak as agent or applicant for this file, please use the raise hand feature and we will allow you to speak.
So Susan Hill is on the. Susan, do you have anything you'd like to say about your application?
Okay, Susan has her hand raised. Okay, Susan, you should be able to unmute and turn on your camera to present.
Hi.
Hi, Susan.
Hi there. I don't really have anything to report other than I'm here. And
Okay.
Ron was supposed to be joining. Zoom he has.
You're cutting out a little bit. We didn't hear all of that. You said Ron was supposed to attend.
He is away, but he said he was joining by phone.
Okay.
So maybe his connection hasn't worked. I don't know.
Okay, Clerk Martel, is there a phone number that's
There is. So there is a phone number caller. So Ron, if that's you, if you want to dial *6, I believe it is, will be the raise hand feature for a phone call in. Or it's *9. I'm not seeing any hands raised.
no?
I know he's away, so maybe he's just not getting a good connection.
Are you, Clerk Martel, are you able to allow that phone number, whoever's on there, to speak, just so we can see if it is Ron?
I can. There's actually 2 call-ins with the same phone number. So I think somebody must have shared their connection, but let me just allow one to speak. So I've just allowed one of the call-in listeners to speak. Can you just let us know if it is Ron Davidson or not, please.
I don't think so. No. Okay. All right. Well, Susan, stay on the screen there. There may be questions from council and there may be questions from the public. So are there any questions for the applicant from council members? Okay, I'm not seeing anything there. Is there anyone present who would like to make a submission in support of or opposition to this application, or have any questions or comments about this application? Is there anyone wishing to speak to this application? Nobody
Again, I
indicated.
don't see.
Okay. All right. Well, Susan, you got off easy.
Oh, why, thank you.
So, okay, are there any last comments, questions from council? Okay, not seeing anything. So as there's no further discussion, this application will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration. Thank you, Susan.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Allen, I believe I just got notice. I believe he is the call-in number ending in 647. So Ron, that is, I don't know if he just isn't, it's not connecting or what's going on there.
Okay. Well, there were no questions or comments, so I don't know that we
Hello?
really. Oh,
I think I'm on.
there he is. Hi, Ron.
Oh, hi. My apologies. I am sitting here. Been trying to unmute myself for the last 10 minutes. That would be, let's blame it on Manitoulin Island internet.
Okay. Well,
Sorry about that.
We've been through everything, and there's been no questions from council and no comments from anybody, any public of the public. So if you want to make a quick comment, then that's fine. If not, that's fine also.
Yeah, I heard. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep this really short. In my mind, this is a relatively straightforward application, even though we're amending the official plan. During pre-consultation with your staff, I believe Matt advised that there have been either 2 or 3 identical applications in the last couple of years that were proposing an increase in the lot density policy to bring it in line with the county. I know one of those for sure happened because I was involved with it. I think the last name was Strahl. So this really isn't, this request isn't out of the ordinary from which you've dealt with in the past. And just lastly, it does conform with all other official plan policies. It does conform entirely with the county OP, and it is consistent with the provincial policy statements. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
And it conforms to the zoning, correct?
That is correct, and that's why we did not need an amendment to the zoning bylaw.
Right. Okay. Thank you. All right. So as I said, this application will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration, unless a member of council has a comment after Mr. Davidson's. No. Okay. Thank you, Susan and Ron. Okay, the next file, as I said, I'll be declaring a conflict of interest, and Councillor Little has agreed to take this file. Councillor Little.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next zoning bylaw amendment is file Z19-2022. The registered owners are Jean Maybell Batchelor and Stanley Batchelor. The location of the subject land is part lot 167, concession 1, NET SR Artemisia, part 1, 17R2095, Grey Highlands, and lot 167, 168-168, Concession 1, NETSR Artemisia, except Part 1, 17R 2095 Grey Highlands, and the civic address is 773713 Highway 10. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on May the 18th, 2022 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. I will now have our planner review the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and advise of comments received. Planner Rapke?
Thank you. The subject property is a 40.5 hectare lot and is located south of Flesherton on Highway 10. The proposal is to sever an area of around 19 hectares that will be merged with an existing 0.4 hectare or 1 acre parcel that abuts the subject lands along the Highway 10 frontage, and that is also owned by the applicants. Once merged with the existing 0.4 hectare parcel, the severed lot will have a total area of around 19.4 hectares and a frontage of 191 meters. The retained lot will have an area of around 20.6 hectares and a frontage of around 201 meters. The consent application BO4-2022 has been conditionally approved by the Committee of Adjustment. One of the conditions is that the lands be rezoned to change the rural residential zoning on the existing 0.4 hectare lot to rural to match the intent of creating a generally farm-sized lot. The area of the enlarged lot will fall short of the required 20 hectare minimum lot size. The proposed zoning amendment will also apply site-specific permissions to allow a minimum lot size of 19 hectares. So to summarize, the purpose is to amend the bylaw to rezone the subject lands to rural 445. The 445 exception will permit a minimum lot size of 19 hectares, whereas the zoning bylaw has a standard minimum lot size of 20 hectares for the rural zone. In terms of comments received, Grey County Planning commented the subject lands are designated rural in the county's OP. Consents are permitted for lot addition purposes or to correct lot boundaries where the land being added is to be added to an existing use, provided the enlarged and retained lots are greater than 0.4 hectares each. The above noted lot density provisions in Table 9 do not apply to lot additions. The proposed severed and retained lands are greater than 0.4 hectares, and the county has no concerns in this regard. Appendix B indicates the northern corner of the property contains significant woodlands. It is recommended that any new development be directed at least 120 meters from the edge of this mapped feature, and further comments be received from the Conservation Authority. Section 5.2.2 of the official plan notes minimum distance separation shall not apply to lot additions which do not result in the creation of a new lot. It's recommended that further comments be received from MTO to ensure access can be gained to the proposed lot and large lot from Highway 10. Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, there's a long version of their comments attached. They had no issues with the proposed consent to sever. It was considered acceptable by them. The Ministry of Transportation commented the proposal has been considered in accordance with the requirements of the Public Transportation and Highway Improvement Act, MTO's Highway Access Management Guidelines, and all related policies. Following outlines are comments. The subject property is located within MTO's permit control area, and as such, MTO review, approval, and permits are required before any development activities take place on site, such as demolition, grading, construction, or alteration of the site. MTO supports the proposed consent. Upon registration of the consent, MTO will permit one access to the retained parcel and one access to the severed parcel. MTO will not permit any further access to Highway 10. After approval, the owner shall apply to MTO for entrance permits to define the uses taking place on the severed and retained parcels, and they provide an application link for the applicant's convenience. That's the extent of any comments we received on this file. All other departments had no concerns internally.
Thank you, Planner Rapke. Are there any questions or discussion from council at this time? I'm not seeing any. If the applicant or agent is present and you would like to make representation on your application, please identify yourself by stating your name for the record. Clerk Martell, is there anyone in attendance for this file?
So I do see Jean and Stanley Batchelor in attendance. So if you'd like to make representation on your file, please use the raise hand feature and then we will allow you to speak at that time. Okay, I'm just going to move them over now. Planner Rapi, as co-host can, oh, there, it's going over now. There we go. Okay, Jean and Stanley, you should be able to unmute and turn on your video.
Unmute.
There we go.
Good afternoon, Jean and Stanley.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, do you want to turn your camera on?
Oh, I'm not sure.
All right, well,
I'm
you
not
don't
sure
have
how.
you don't
Yeah.
have to.
Okay.
Is there anything that you would like to add to what Planner Rapke has said about this file?
We have a couple of questions.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
One of the things there that I think Matt said was that the MTO requires us to do an application for driveways, but there are already
Already a driveway.
each lot has already got a driveway that they approved. Well, the one to where our residence was approved, what, about 18 years ago, 19, and it has been there since probably before Confederation. And the other one was approved in 86. So when we made that the original small lot. So do we have to do an application again for both of these?
All right, Planner Rapke, can you shed some light on this, please?
Yeah, MTO provides kind of a standard set of comments every time. I would definitely not worry about the entrance that clearly exists for the house. When you go to build for the vacant lot, particularly if it's within, I can't remember the exact distance, it's less than 50 meters of the highway, you will need a permit from MTO at that point to build the house, and they would, I think, lump in, or they'd at least notify you if the existing entrance needs to be recognized in any other way. But don't worry too much about that for the zoning amendment. We can figure that out after this process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Jean,
we
Jean,
still
is
have a
that-
couple of questions.
yes, go ahead.
Do we have to have a survey within the next 2 years, right?
Is that a question for Matt?
Yeah.
Okay,
Or-
Matt?
You'll probably need a survey. I'll have to double check the exact lot boundaries that you're planning on doing, but from my memory, yes, you'll need a survey. And it will have to be within 2 years of the date the committee issued the approval for the severance.
Okay,
So we've been told two different things. Originally, Matt told us that he thought our survey would only require the front boundary and the south boundary of the new lot. We talked to a surveyor and he says he thinks the whole thing has to be surveyed, not just, so we're a bit confused. We're not sure who has the say of what has to be done.
Yeah, that's a good question. Matt, who regulates this? Who sets the rules for this?
All that's needed for the only reason a survey is needed is so that the lawyer has a legal description that pertains to an extent of land that has been described appropriately through some means. The most common means is through a reference plan produced by a surveyor. That can sometimes be done, not you would imagine that the part that you're conveying would have to be entirely surveyed. You can kind of do it by subtraction sometimes, I believe. If you have all the remaining parts surveyed, you could do it that way, but that's your surveyor will probably tell you. You might want to talk to your lawyer though. They'd be able to confirm for you too. That's not us though.
Yeah, okay. All right, so Jean, you've got some direction there. You can speak with your lawyer and your surveyor to, I guess your surveyor first and then your lawyer to get some clear direction on this.
So we get a written statement now, our next steps on what we are to do.
I think what Matt was saying was that your surveyor would be able to advise you and then you would need to speak with your lawyer.
Does the lawyer get the report of this or what?
I don't have an answer for that. I don't know, Planner Rapke, if you do.
Yeah, I would suggest, Jean and Stan, that so the process here, this will go to council for decision on the zoning amendment. Council will approve or deny that. Assuming they approve it, there's an appeal period for that to close before it's finalized. That's one of the conditions of your consent. And then there's probably some other conditions there. I would suggest maybe try giving me a shout tomorrow and we can go over all those conditions and figure out all the next steps on everything.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay,
Okay.
And
Thank
did you have another question, Jean?
no, that's good.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. At this point, is there anyone present who would like to make a submission in support of or opposition to this application or have any questions or comments about the application? Clerk Martel?
So if there's anybody in attendance that wants to speak to this application, please use the raise hand feature. Just scrolling through all the people on the attendee side, and I don't see any hands raised.
All right. Thanks, Clerk Martel. Are there any further questions from council members or discussion from council members? Mayor McQueen?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just maybe to Matt. So just thinking about that survey thing. So basically the original lot was created quite a long time ago and it's being rolled back into the 19 hectares at half the farm, correct, Matt? That's what we did at the committee of adjustment, right?
Almost. If that were the
That's
case,
right.
the survey wouldn't be needed. It'd be really easy. But the driveway location required, it's like slightly different than exactly the original lot.
Okay, because generally if it's half the 100 acres original farm, it'd be 50 and 50 or 20 and 20, right? But because there's a slight, okay, that's the part that threw me a little bit too. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt and Mayor McQueen. Are there any other questions, comments from members of council? I'm not seeing any. So as there is no further discussion, this application will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration. And I will hand the chair back to our Chair Allen.
Thank you very much, Councillor Little. The last file is official plan amendment OP01 2022 and zoning bylaw amendment Z06 2022. The registered owner is GH1 Developments Incorporated, and the location of the subject land is parts of lots 95, 96, and 97, concession 1, NETSR, Municipality of Grey Highlands, in the former geographic township of Artemisia. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on May 20, 2022 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. In addition, emailed to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. I'll now have our planner review the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and advise of comments received. Director Benner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposal is a plan of subdivision that will create 469 new lots comprising 313 detached residential lots and 156 multi-attached residential units. There will also be associated with that new roads, parks, stormwater management facilities, and open space blocks. The purpose and effect of the applications before us this evening are the official plan amendments are required for both the county and Municipality of Grey Highlands official plans to facilitate the proposed development. The purpose and effect of the county official plan amendment is to redesignate a portion of the lands in the northeast part of the subject lands from rural to primary settlement area. And this would permit the new residential development in that portion of the lands. The purpose and effect of the Grey Highlands official plan amendment is to incorporate the same settlement area boundary changes required under the county official plan. And the Grey Highlands OP amendment will also provide a more specific designation of neighborhood to the area subject to the settlement area boundary expansion. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment, which is just the local zoning bylaw, is to amend the Municipality of Grey Highlands comprehensive zoning bylaw to rezone the subject lands to implement the 469 unit plan subdivision. The effect of that zoning bylaw is to change the zone symbol from an open space OS 10 to a special residential zone and open space zones. The OS 10 zone permitted a golf course and ancillary structures back in the day. The new residential zones would fall into several categories to accommodate row townhouse units, small lot, single detached units, standard single detached units, and a flex zone would accommodate both small lot single units and row town type units. The flex zone will not be implemented in phases 1, 2, or 3, and the open space zones would firstly be established in for active parkland spaces, pedestrian access ways, and secondly for stormwater management ponds and access ways. It is also anticipated that a holding zone be established for the lots in part of phase 3 that fall within the landfill restriction area. In terms of comments received, we've received a lot of comments on this application, both from agencies and residents and the public. So I'll start out with a summary of the agency comments received. We received comments from the Grey County Planning and Development Services Department on April 14th, 2022. And I should note that the Director of Planning for the County of Grey is also in attendance and will maybe making a few comments after I'm finished. So the county planning staff are presently reviewing this proposal. An information report was presented to the county's planning committee on April 14th, and a copy of that report is attached in my report. Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority also provided comments on May 18th, and they note that in general, SVCA staff find the proposed plan of subdivision acceptable, provided SVA's recommended conditions 1 through 9 for draft plan agreement are implemented. If the SVA staff's recommendations are implemented, it is the opinion of the SVCA staff that consistency with section 3.1 natural heritage policies of the PPS, the provincial policy statement, will be demonstrated. Consistency with section 2.1 natural heritage policies of the PPS will be demonstrated, and consistency with local planning policies for natural hazards and natural heritages will be demonstrated as well. The historic Saugeen Métis commented on May 2nd, and they note that the historic Saugeen Métis HSM Lands, Resources and Consultation Department has reviewed the relevant documents and have no objection or opposition to the proposed Lune subdivision application in Grey Highlands. Hydro One Networks provided comments on May 2nd, noting no concerns. Enbridge provided comments dated April 12th, and they note it is Enbridge Gas Incorporated request that as a condition of final approval that the owner developer provide to Enbridge the necessary easements and or agreements required by Enbridge for the provision of gas services for the project in a form satisfactory to Enbridge. Canada Post provided comments on April 12th, and they noted that they have reviewed the proposal for the above noted development and have determined that the completed project will be serviced by a centralized mail delivery provided through Canada Post community mailboxes. Our centralized delivery policy will apply for any buildings of 3 or more self-contained units with a common indoor area. For these units, the owner developer will be required to install a mail panel and provide access to Canada Post. Conditions are to be included in the subdivision approval process, and in the body of the comments, they provided conditions for that. Blue Water District School Board comments dated April 28th note that the school board has no objections to this development, provided conditions are included in the subdivision application process. We also received comments from some members of the public who provided written comments prior to the public meeting, but after my report was prepared. And I can provide a bit of a summary for those. Their full written comments will be obviously included in any reports coming back to council. And I will also circulate their full written comments as well as any other written comments received this evening following this evening's planning hearing. The Mr. James Norris has provided 2 letters, one to the County of Grey and then one to Grey Highlands. And his concerns in both letters really deal with traffic impacts, water and sewage, capacity impacts, geotechnical concerns with the slope of the Saugeen River, rainfall concerns and servicing and level of control, as well as, in more particularly with the Grey Highlands lens, is quality of life issues with such a large proposal, such a large development being proposed within the settlement area of Markdale. Janet Carson provided comments on June 23rd, and her comments were mostly positive, and she liked the idea of affordability and then the benefits to the community with a larger population base that would be associated with this development. And then we received comments from Shannon Ladinardi and Jeremy Campbell dated June 24th. And they had concerns with the impacts to the Saugeen River and its associated floodplain, its natural habitat areas and endangered species. They also had some concerns with the privacy of their own property and the potential for trespassing. They also had some concerns with increased traffic, impacts on the school and amenities in the area, such as shopping and health services and what have you. Also noted impacts on the community center and arena use, and also would have preferred an in-person meeting as opposed to a Zoom meeting, noting that not everybody can access a digital environment as well as others. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll certainly pass those comments on to council and include them in a upcoming report back to council on this. Those are the extent of the comments received so far.
Okay, thank you, Director Benner. You mentioned that the county planner, Scott Taylor, is in attendance. Do we want to hear from him now, or do we want to go see if there's questions from council? What's the best process here? Clerk Martel, I see you've popped up.
Yes, I believe that it'd be similar to how we had Director Benner present now, if we had Scott Taylor present now and then go into the questions, because he maybe answer some questions that were there. I did just want to pop on and let you know that Councillor Nielsen had internet issues and has popped off, and he will watch this session after.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the county planner then will hear from Mr. Taylor. Hi, Scott.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Allen and members of council and all those that might be tuning in. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. I did prepare just a very brief PowerPoint presentation. Clerk Martel, is it possible to just start that first slide there?
Sorry, I thought you were going to present yourself.
Oh, I can present myself. Sure, I didn't know I'd have the opportunity, so I will just share my screen and leave you alone. Can everyone see that there now?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Again, I'll go through this rather briefly because some of it is an overlap of what Director Benner just presented. So as we know, these are the subject lands. They're about 33 hectares in size, and the sort of donut hole you see in the middle there is the stormwater facility. The lands would connect ultimately to Highway 10 via new access onto Highway 10. There'd be a connection to Margaret Elizabeth Avenue, as well as a connection to Stan Baker Avenue. As Director Benner showed, these are this is the layout of the proposed subdivision. He already went through a rundown of the number of units and noted that there would be additional lands for parks and new roads and stormwater facilities. So I won't retread those grounds, so to speak. This is the map from the county official plan. What you're seeing in red there is the county's primary settlement area boundaries, and what you're seeing in white is the rural designation, and then you see the green areas, which are the hazard lands along the river there. Just for a bit of background on this, these lands were brought into the settlement area designation of Markdale and Grey Highlands in the year 2012 in an amendment to the county official plan. So since 2012, these lands have been recognized for growth. And at the time when they were brought in 2012, there was a process that the municipality went through with both the county and the province, because the province was the approval authority on the county's plan at that time, to look at exactly the exact number of hectares of land that were needed for growth. And that was based on analyses that were done in 2010 and 2011. So at that time, the full property wasn't brought into the primary settlement area, or the red color on that map, which is why you see some white or rural area on the northern side of the property. Since then, of course, growth has picked up, and there is demand for more residential units across Grey Highlands and Markdale in the county. So the process through this official plan amendment is, for lack of better words, to turn that white into red, to look at using the entire property for residential development in that regard, save and except, of course, for the hazard lands. Those would be protected, and there would be buffers to those lands. So quite often when we're dealing with the development of this nature, especially a larger plan of subdivision, there's questions sometimes from members of the public and maybe even from council. You know, why are we looking at so many houses here? And the province tells us, and it's enshrined in our county official plan policies and your own municipal official plan policies, that we need to use the land within our growth areas efficiently, both for the purposes of providing infrastructure, so water and sewer pipes and roads, but also to minimize the amount of land that needs to be taken up by development, so that we can preserve our farmland and our natural spaces. In this case, the sort of magic number in the county official plan, which is carried forward to your own municipal official plan, is 20 residential units per net hectare. And what we mean by net hectare is specifically the residential lands. So we exclude things like roads, we would exclude parks, or if there was any stormwater facilities, if there was commercial sites or school sites, those would be excluded as well. One of the other things we also look at when we're looking at development of this nature is just to ensure it's compatible with its surroundings, both in terms of the natural environment. So there was an environmental impact study done on this, specifically with respect to the lands along the river, but also with respect to any neighboring development, whether it be residential or commercial or industrial. And the one thing to note here is although we speak to compatibility, compatibility doesn't necessarily need to mean the same as. So although there might be residential dwellings nearby that are semi-detached uses, it doesn't necessarily mean that a townhouse, for example, would be incompatible if it were near a semi-detached dwelling in that regard. Just to take you through some more of the sort of frequently asked questions we often get on a development of this size. Again, why is the developer proposing so many homes? And at times we've heard comments from members of the public to wonder if the developer is just trying to squeeze in as many as they can. But in this case, the developer is actually trying to meet both the county, the provincial, and the municipal policies in that regard, and to efficiently use the land, as I've stated. There's often questions about whether or not the growth is needed for our community. And when I say our community, I mean both the Grey Highlands, but then also Grey County as a whole. In this case, in the year 2020 and 2021, the county completed a growth management strategy. And that strategy was to look at our long-term growth needs across the entire county for the next 25 years. And staff from the municipality of Grey Highlands were instrumental in helping with this study to help inform the county and our consultant on the local picture. And it should be no surprise to those around the table today that the entire county is growing. We're seeing lots of development interest in our county, all across the county, and certainly Grey Highlands is right up there in that regard. And so although I said that the lands have been part of the settlement area and the growth area since 2012, we're seeing more and more pressure for development on these areas of undeveloped land within our settlement areas. We also know that there's a big need for housing across the county, to the point where the lack of housing has started to not only impact those that are seeking housing, but it also impacts our employers and our businesses who can't recruit new employees when there's not enough housing. One of the other common concerns that we do hear is with respect to who might live in this future housing. And we want to make it clear at sort of the outset of the meeting in this regard that housing is a human right, and we can't discriminate against anyone, or we can't get into speculation about any person or persons that might move into this housing. Simply put, that the housing is built for people, and we hope to be able to attract people to live there. So in framing our comments tonight, and when we do get into hearing from council and the public, I just like that to be kept in mind, that we can comment on the land use, but we certainly don't get into speculation around who the future users might be in that regard, because everyone deserves a healthy and safe place to live, and in order to be an inclusive and welcoming community, we do need these housing locations across our communities. We also sometimes, when we have a development like this, we hear concerns over the potential for impact on property values or tax rates. And the one thing I'll say in this regard, to build on some of my earlier comments, is that using land efficiently creates for more efficient service provision. So if you can picture a new road with, let's say, a kilometer-long road, and installing water and sewer pipes along that road, if you have 6 users along that road, road, then you ultimately have 6 users paying into that system, versus if you had 50 users along that road, you'd have 50 users paying into the system. So by using the land efficiently in this regard, it can actually create a positive impact on the tax rate. And the developer in this case, should they get their approvals, will be the ones building the roads, and they'll be the ones building the water and the sewer pipes. But once the development is built, that infrastructure then gets turned over to the municipality. So we as county staff and your municipal staff need to think long-term about how that infrastructure is going to be paid for and how that infrastructure is going to be maintained over time. So that's a further incentive to the municipality and to the county to look at the efficient use of land and services in that regard, providing a larger customer base and people contributing to the tax base and system in that regard. We also quite often hear about concerns on the impact on the environment, and certainly in some of the public comments that Director Benner read out, there was some concerns for impacts on the river. One of the key bodies that helps review these applications is the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and their key mandate is the protection of natural hazards and natural heritage in that regard. So they would help us review the environmental impact study. We hear concerns about whether or not the additional housing will create traffic and parking problems. With respect to the traffic issue, we'll be reviewing this application both at the county level with our Transportation Services Department, your own municipal road staff will be reviewing it, as well as the Ministry of Transportation in this regard, because it will have access onto the provincial highway. So between the 3 road authorities all involved, they'll be keenly looking at what levels of traffic will be generated and whether or not there's any improvements needed to the roads in this regard. So improvements could be things like turn lanes or even traffic signals in that regard. With respect to some of the multi-attached dwellings on the property, quite often people with multi-attached dwellings would own less cars. So it's not necessarily given that it would be 2 cars per household. So it's not a simple equation to calculate the number of cars, but there has been a traffic study provided in that regard. And finally, the last concern I'll talk about is the concern about construction noise and traffic. And no doubt, if this development is approved, it'll be constructed in phases, and it will be constructed over a number of years. And certainly staff at both county and municipal level want to be sympathetic to those living and working in the area, and making sure that the routes for the construction vehicles, as well as the timing of construction, isn't unduly impactful on any of the neighbors. No doubt there will be noise, there will be traffic and everything else, but the developer will work very closely with the municipality if they get their approvals to mitigate any excessive noise or disruption in that regard. And so tonight, as we've heard from both the chair and Director Benner, we're here to listen tonight to your thoughts. And so some of the things that we'd like you to consider are, do you have any thoughts on the proposed ratio of single and multi-attached units? Do you have any comments about the layout of the proposed development? What about traffic, including both roads, sidewalks, and safety? Any thoughts on landscaping or fencing or the parkland? Is there anything you see in this development that you feel is missing? Should there be anything else added? And are there any other questions or comments you have about this proposed development? And with that, that's all I have at this stage. I'm certainly here to listen and to help respond to any questions if there are any. But I'd like to thank council and staff and the public for allowing me to speak here this evening.
Okay, thank you, Planner Taylor. Are there any questions for either one of the planners from council members? Lots of questions. Okay, Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I just had a couple of more questions related to the information that was provided to us on this file. I noted that there was a response from the Métis. I didn't see anything from San. Were they circulated, and are you anticipating a response from them? That's my first question.
Who's going to take that? Director Benner?
Yes, thank you, Chair Allen, through you to Councillor Little. We did reach out to San, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, and they did respond. They were actually asking for more detailed information, and we're preparing that and sending them that information back to them for review.
Okay. Thank you. If I may, Chair Allen, one more question.
Sure.
It was related to the report from Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and I don't think I missed it, but in their summary, they said that staff find the proposed plan of subdivision acceptable, provided Saugeen Valley's recommended conditions 1 through 9 for draft plan agreement are implemented. See below for a summary of recommended conditions. Was that just level of detail not included? I just wasn't able to find it. And if it's not, if it was too detailed to include, can I find it somewhere else? Thank you.
I think I did see under that statement, I think there were 3 or 4 conditions, but then further on in the report, I believe there were the 9, I believe. Looks like both planners are looking. Director Benner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just pulled up the SVCA's comments, and they've broken out their recommended conditions in almost in 2 sections. They have the it would be, sorry, let's find a page number here. It'd be page 2 of 11 of their report. And they have a recommendation, and they provide 3 conditions there. So 1, 2, 3A and B. And then it looks like they go along and then provide, let's get the page number again for you. They go way down to page 10 of 11 and provide conditions 4, 5, and 6. So in seeing that, as we develop a plan of subdivision, there's a lot of back and forth with agencies and what have you. So after I read this, I was thinking, well, are there conditions that they've missed, or it's a little bit unusual to have the conditions broken up like that. So I was going to reach out to them and see if I could get a more wholesome list, or at least a decent list of conditions that I could easily track to put into the agreement. And as well as I know Director Taylor is going to need conditions for the draft plan of subdivision itself.
Thank you. Just thinking about that, EIS was done, but a lot of public concerns relate to the environment and the impacts, and it's the role of the Conservation Authority to, oversee and mitigate some of those impacts. And so those conditions would probably be helpful to members of the public who carry those concerns. If even if they were a little clearer, the ability to find them was a little bit clearer, so that would be helpful. Thank you. That's all I have, Chair Allen.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Mayor McQueen and then to Councillor Allwood.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just was going to add that there was a number of people, or I know myself, attended sort of a information session. I'm not sure that was the end of April. I'm trying to think, early part of May. I was trying to see if it was in the report. I didn't find it, but anyway, that was also to get just in a sense of process. It was gaining some feedback all through this process. I know tonight's the public meeting, but there was also other engagement sessions that were also. And I know the other issue I see there's Canada Post has made comments here, and the centralized mail delivery is going to be, I know that is some concern with rural mail, and this is more of an urban setting, but I guess, is that something that will work with our downtown postal service? Because if it's quite an increase in the postal service for Markdale as a certain rural, well, I don't know if it's called a rural route or what do you call it, postal code, but it's just something that got me thinking in the sense that, it's sort of set for that size. Is that something that, I see Michael maybe is nodding his head, maybe he has a comment there, I'm not sure, but it's just something that because of, you get a few lots, a few additions, but this is, as others, it's quite a change. And I don't see it being a problem. It's just something that is unique for Markdale, is they do have a downtown postal service that obviously has to sort mail and all that kind of stuff. So maybe for Canada Post, having more addresses is a good thing because it adds more business to what they're trying to do too. I don't know if there's any comments there, but so those are my 2 comments, Mr. Chair.
Director Benner, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the mayor. The recommendations and conditions that were provided to us actually come from Canada Post's main office in Ottawa, or actually London. So I don't know the details of how the distribution system works in terms of the local post offices versus the regional offices, but we can certainly reach out to the Markdale office to see if they're comfortable with the conditions, if there's anything else that they need to see from the local lens on how mail is delivered.
I don't see it being a problem. It's just something that I thought of in the sense that as we see this and other development, it's sort of like it's certainly going to have some effect on on that service for sure, in the sense of increasing the size. And also, I don't know if there's any comments with regards to the other input session that was held, and that maybe got more information that got us to this point too, I'm presuming.
That input session was put on by the developers, I believe. So I'm not sure if any information was passed on to the municipality. But okay, Councillor Allwood.
Thank you, Cheryl, and through you to the attendees, and a couple questions. One, I just wanted to, I have no pecuniary interest in this, but back in 2012, I was a volunteer president of the golf course who owned the property, and we went through those changes and got the designations that are currently shown. And the part that was left rural, there were some concerns at that time about the former landfill site in the northwest corner of the property that the municipality owns. It's not in the property, rather, it's on the boundary of the property. But so that was my one question. Has there been any further, like, the intent was back in 2012 that would be, hopefully included as some sort of parkland in a future development. And we were looking at sort of mixed traditional housing, traditional neighborhood development. So I'm encouraged by the mix of housing in this proposal. The other, so the one question was that piece of municipal property that's on the boundary in the northwest corner that was a former landfill on the bank of the river. So has there been an update on that? And two, the concerns that were expressed in the public comments about water and sewage treatment. I wondered if our director of planning could confirm that there's adequate capacity in our sewage treatment and water facilities to incorporate not only this development, but I think if I remember correctly, there are over not all on municipal water, and but 1,200 dwellings being developed in Grey Highlands over the next few years. But within the serviced areas, do we have the capacity that some of our public expressed concerns over? Thank you.
Director Benner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Councillor Allwood. First of all, the former landfill site, the municipal property at the northwest corner of the lands, the development group is actually undertaking an updated D6 study on the landfill, looking at if there's any any potential for leachate movement or what have you. And that study will dictate how close development can actually get to those lands. The lands themselves are not part of this development, and they will be abutting the kind of the stormwater management system that's being proposed. So there's a bit of a buffer in there just by way of this the stormwater management piece. But that being said, the studies are still underway to see what that impact is and see what the buffers are. In terms of water and sewage capacity, this development, as well as the large development on the south side of Markdale that's being proposed, are both phased. And municipal staff have been looking at our present sewer and water capacity, and we just had a meeting about it this morning, actually, or sorry, this afternoon. And what we are looking at is, as council may recall, I think it was back in 2018. Perhaps Director Taylor can help me with that date as well. But typically, when you have subdivision approval, you allocate sewer and water capacity at the time of draft plan approval for the subdivision. Over the last few years, municipalities have been exercising an option to allocate capacity not at draft plan approval, but at the time of registration of the certain phases of development. And that's to make sure that developers don't kind of hang on to capacity for 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 years. So in this case, with GH1 as well as the development on the south side of Markdale, there is capacity for the first, I believe, 3 phases for this one, and the first phase in the southern development as well, because they're both of equal size. The phase 1 on the southern development is 170 some odd units, and these phases are, when you look at these first 3 phases, are somewhere around there too. So there is enough water and sewer capacity to handle these phases. We're also in the process of undertaking a study to see what it would take to upgrade our sewer capacity. We have lots of water capacity now, but to upgrade our lagoon capacity to accommodate more development. So long-winded way to say, yes, there is capacity for the first couple phases of this development.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from council members? Okay, I have one quick one. We talked about the flex zone, and which will allow, I'm assuming, single family or higher density. Is that in the future, is that at the discretion of the developer, or will they need to come back to us for any permissions?
To you, Mr. Chair, they will still have to come back to us with that one. It is for the future phases, and we haven't quite fleshed that out yet. Still have to work on the wording for that flex zone and what that entails. Does it entail a site plan or what have you? But perhaps when the development group does their presentation, that might be a good question to ask their planner as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Mayor McQueen.
So when you talk about flex zone, are you talking more like an inclusionary zoning? Is that what, because I know that's some more conversations that are happening possibly at the provinces of changing that type of thing. I don't know if there's any comments from Scott or yourself, want to go, but on inclusionary zoning.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor. The flex zone that we're speaking of is not as detailed as inclusionary zoning would be. Inclusionary zoning is more where a development is basically through that inclusionary zoning required to provide a certain percentage of of affordable or attainable units. Have you flex more to help this development work with market conditions at the time of those future phases, and to see how that would play out in years to come.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. I hate to admit this, but my device is running low. I have grandkids here and they've been plugging in their devices. So I think I'm going to have to change devices. So I'm going to suggest that we take a 5-minute break because this meeting could go on a little bit longer than some of our planning hearings. So we'll take about a 5-minute break. I'm going to disconnect and connect on a different device. All right, so it is what, 6:11? So let's try for 6:16. Okay, thank you. Okay, is everybody back? Wait for a few more people to come back. Okay. Okay, the next step is if the applicant or agent is present and would like to make representation on your application, please identify yourself by stating your name for the record. Is there somebody wishing to speak on this file?
So the agent actually provided me with a list of people. So I'm just starting to add them over now. I believe Suresh Singh is going to be the speaker first.
Okay.
I should start. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Suresh Singh. I'm the president and owner of Loon Call at GH1 Development Inc. for this particular development. And I'd like to thank the mayor and council and staff for allowing us to make a presentation tonight. And in particular, Michael Benner and Scott Taylor, I really appreciated both of your presentations. I think it really helps us, and I think it helps the public at large understand things very clearly when you present the way you did. Our company has been building and developing homes for 26 years now, and primarily our focus has been on building homes that the people who live in broader communities who work in broader communities can afford to live in. And that ends up being something called attainable ownership homes. And we do this as a private company with no help from, no financial from any levels of government, which can be really, really challenging, as everyone knows that affordability in housing is one of the most challenging things in all of the first world, not just Toronto, the Greater Toronto Area, Southern Ontario, Canada, the US, everywhere on the planet. So our company has focused very, very specifically on that particular area of the market. And we have a proven track record of being able to deliver these homes in an effective way that has served communities very well, and more specifically has served the people who work in those communities and provide services from teachers to police officers and Enbridge gas workers, healthcare workers, nurses, physicians, right down to the folks who own the local convenience stores. I'm going to show you, if I can share my screen, I'd love to show you some of the developments that we have done, because I think it will help the community understand what we're proposing for the community. So let me do this here. There we go. So this is a typical single-family home that we have constructed in Muskoka, in Bracebridge, and Gravenhurst. In those two communities, over the last 10 years, we've built approximately 500 homes, and they've been, the zoning that we've had, this type of size of lots, are exactly what we're proposing for most of this particular site. And I'll just run through these. So these are typical finishes that you would see in a home that we would construct. Here's a development that we did in Jasper National Park. It was a private-public partnership with ourselves, a local nonprofit, the federal government, and the municipality of Jasper. And again, these were done with no financial contribution by any level of government, although they did contribute, assist us with getting financing, given it was core need in that particular community. And there's 64 townhomes there. These are townhomes in Bracebridge. It was a mixed-use development, mixed density development, so townhomes, singles, and semi-detached homes. Here's one in Gravenhurst, again, a mix, but not a huge mix. But you can see that we do a lot of single-family homes and a lot of townhomes. We have been able to provide single-family homes at prices and values that are highly attainable to again the folks that we're looking to serve. Another group of townhomes here, single-family homes. These are average about 1,750 square feet, and this development was completed about 3 years ago. And the average selling price for these 1,750 square foot homes with double car garage, full basement was $280,000. This is another development which is well on its way to completion in Bracebridge. It's 89 homes. Another one in Gravenhurst. This one's 220, and it's about half complete. Another one that we're about to start in Bracebridge, where we've sold many of the homes, but we have not started servicing or construction at this stage. In Meaford, this development is 201 homes. We are going to start servicing in the coming months and have house construction underway in early 2023. And we will start again with townhomes in this development. Very similar to what we've done in Muskoka and very similar to what we're proposing in Grey Highlands. This is the Grey Highlands site. I won't go through our particular details on our development because our professional team will do that, and they will address the concerns that council and neighbors may have here. I know coming into a new community, it's always difficult for neighbors to trust a developer. A developer, that word can ring challenging to many in the public. But as we always mention to all staff and council when we're introduced into a community, we ask them to reach out to mayors and staff and other agencies in the communities that we have developed in, and that's no different to what the point we've made in Grey Highlands is for that to happen. And there has never been a case where where the communication has not been that Loon Call does what they say and we say what we do. Even in these incredibly challenging times, we stick to our commitments and we're unwavering. And I also know that there another part that people start to get concerned about is well, if you're going to sell homes for reasonable prices, people are going to buy them and flip them. And I hear that and I go, yeah, that could happen, but we do monitor it quite closely. And about 18 months ago, before we got our approvals in Meaford, we invited all of council to tour the developments that we have in Muskoka. And we drove through streets where there were 300 homes that we had recently completed construction. And of the 300 homes, there were exactly 3 with for sale signs on. That's actually less than what a typical marketplace anywhere. 1% of homes under for sale is a very, very, very low number. So we actually don't have people flipping our homes because there's a concern, where do I go from there? And when we are selling homes, we're very careful with who buys a home from us. We find out where they work. We find out where they live. Obviously, we get that information on their agreement of purchase and sale, and then through their mortgage approval process. And we really intimately understand who our home buyers are. And that really helps us thwart people who buy as investors. Obviously, we are not 100% perfect on that, because it does happen, but we do all we can to stop that particular eventuality happening. I heard a couple of specific comments, and I'm really appreciative that Scott Taylor mentioned the minimum density requirement in the County of Grey. And what's interesting about that particular minimum density requirement, it lines up perfectly with the homes that we build. Invariably, our developments end up being 20 units per hectare, and they work quite well. I think, as you've seen the plans that in the actual over drone photographs that we've provided for several of our developments. And I'd like to also reiterate the importance of intensifying on existing infrastructure. I know Scott mentioned, if you have a kilometer of road and you build 6 houses on it, it's not efficient and it's not effective. It is our core belief on an environmental basis that intensification within urban boundaries is one of the critical ways of protecting the environment. It allows municipalities not to expand their urban boundaries, thereby protecting rural lands, conservation lands. Whereas if you have a sprawl, that's in big lots, that's the problem that you're going to have. And we all know that, the province of Ontario and municipalities are all looking at how do we create a faster pipeline for the approval process so that we can try to solve the housing crisis that we have that I've already spoken to. And, it's not through expanding urban boundaries because you want to have bigger lots. It's through that intensification process. And our development meets that particular process perfectly. One of the other things that I know concerns folks, they see a development, wow, 400 and almost 470 homes on this particular site. When I hear that number, I go, wow, that's really big. But at the end of the day, these homes will get introduced into the community over a very long period of time. It's no different than if this site were owned by 8 different developers. Those 8 different developers could build 1 phase each, and this thing could get rolled out into the community within 2, 3, 4 years. Having it in our hands and under a single pair of hands means that each phase for us will take 18 to 24 months. And that means the impacts on the community get introduced in a very appropriate manner on a timing perspective, as opposed to, there being, 1,000 more kids coming to the schools. It's not going to be like that, as opposed to there being this big number of cars added into the roadways. It's not going to be like that. It will happen, our first phase between getting our engineering approvals, building the infrastructure, the roads, the water and sewer, all of those things, the stormwater, connecting to a stormwater pond, our development agreements, just before we, assuming hopefully we get an approval here, which is not going to be tomorrow, that's for sure. But once if we do get a draft plan approval and we want to get our first phase going, it's going to take a year before we can even start the process of building the infrastructure. And then that infrastructure will take 6 months. Then the houses will take 15 to 24 months to build. So I think you can see how we're not going to overwhelm the community in any way. It will be a slow incremental process that happens. I also wanted to make a comment about the flex zone, but Bob List, our planner, will go in deeper on that. The flex zone allows us to have basically 2 different types of homes, either a single family home or a townhome. And it designates the the site regulations, the side yards, how big a home could be, the footprint, all of those particular things. And we asked for that on a zoning bylaw basis, so that if the market does shift and pivot, which happens all the time, or we're able to in a more expeditious manner pivot to wherever the market is at that time. It does land right back in the hands of the local municipality and the county, because it will require a red line change to the draft approval, but not to the zoning bylaw. So the municipality and the county, again, have the ability to take a really close look and make sure that any kind of pivot that we make is for a good reason. And they'll be able to layer on whatever additional conditions they feel is prudent for this particular development. I think I've kind of given an explanation of who we are and what we plan to do here. I'm going to hand it over to our team unless anyone has any questions for me, but everyone else will be able to put their hand up on our team to answer something that they are more of an expert on than I am, but I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, we do have a question from Councillor Alwood.
Thank you, Chair Allen, for you too, Mr. Singh. In one of your earlier presentations, you talked about a program of affordable housing that would qualify people that had jobs or live within our community. Is that still the plan? I know you talked about attainable housing, and that's
yes,
different. Could you touch on that, or?
Absolutely, that is the case, and that's what we're doing in Meaford. Through the pandemic and all the supply chain challenges that we've had, we had to pivot away from marketing our homes at this incredibly low number, because there's a fear of what construction costs was going to do to us. And what we've done in Meaford is we pivoted away from that, and we've created two price lists. One for the people who work within Grey County and Simcoe County. Those are the areas that we designated for our Meaford development. And they're able to buy a townhome from us for $299,900. Anyone else would be buying that same home for $100,000 more. And our process for approving that person was what we spoke about in that previous meeting, Councillor Allwood, and that is making sure that they are employed within that particular area, or they retired from a job in that particular area. So we have a whole bunch of different criteria that will require that they will need to jump over in order to be able to buy that home for that lower number. And you know, whenever I hear affordable, I hear attainable. They're relatively similar in my mind in how they do. Our goal is to make homes affordable to the people who work in the community. And the word attainable got introduced because, unfortunately, there's been a negative attitude towards the word affordable. So, fact of life is attainable is a new word, or a relatively new word, used just as a placeholder for affordable, because we didn't like the backlash we were getting when we used that word. And Councillor Allwood, I wanted to mention one other thing. When we purchased this property from the golf club, there was basically everyone who was bidding on the property had to give a presentation. And we gave a presentation, and the golf club elected to, or we were told they elected to go with our bid, not because of price, but because of what we were planning to do in the community and the importance of the type of homes that we're building and we're going to build, assuming we get approved, and knowing that not only do our homes meet the needs of people who are working in the community or the broader community, but they also will help a lot of employers be able to find employees, healthcare facilities being able to find nurses and doctors and other support, are the type of homes we build. Housing is an amazing recruitment tool and a retention tool for businesses to stay in the community. And that's the direction we want to go.
Okay, thank you for that.
Can I-
Councillor Oliver,
Thank you.
quick follow-up.
Thank you. Just, I just wanted to mention, that retaining and retention issue with employees. I'm involved with physicians recruitment on another committee, and one thing that's become apparent is that, and where municipalities can contribute to the issue of primary care and unrostered patients, is having attainable, affordable housing available for the learners and new physicians that want to move into our communities. I think, this type of a development speaks to that very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So are we going to hear from another member of your team, Mr. Singh?
Yes, Bob List, our planner, we'll move on now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob List. I'm a land use planner with my own company, List Planning Limited. Work primarily in Central Ontario. Trying to retire, Suresh won't let me. I think I'll begin by addressing perhaps a few of the comments or questions that council had first before I go through the summary, so that I can give you some background on that. I believe Councillor Little asked a question about the Ojibwe Nation, and I just wanted to update with respect to that our archaeologist Michael Henry from AMA Consultants has been in contact with Sun since the original comment from them was received. We haven't had what I would call a definitive further response from that organization yet, but we will be following up yet again with them through Scott Taylor's office to try and address any concerns that they may have. They haven't identified any concerns, but we don't want that matter to lay in silence. We want to address whatever it is that organization is interested in. So we'll be following up again with them, notwithstanding that we've already followed up with them. With respect to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority comments and the proposed conditions that organization has proposed, I wrote a letter back to Scott Taylor indicating that in general, we don't have any concerns with respect to the conditions that are being proposed by the Conservation Authority. In the world of land use planning, what they're requesting is standard fare. And that goes with respect to all of those conditions, with the exception of one, which we want to speak to them further about. And that has to do with the potential issue of meadowlark habitat on the site, which isn't there now, but the conditions exist that it may. And there's a process that we believe the Conservation Authority is not familiar with, but our consultant is, and our consultant will be speaking with them about that, Mr. Gord Nielsen from Mikowski Nielsen Associates. With respect to another question that was raised about the landfill site, Mr. Benner indicated that we were undertaking further analysis of that site. Wanted to make it clear that in contacting the consultant that did the last report a decade or so ago, we engaged that consultant to confirm that from the consultant's perspective, there wasn't going to be any issue with respect to leachate movement, which is the issue on that site. He said there wasn't any leachate movement previously, but that in order to make sure that we should do a further analysis, but that analysis needs to be conducted in the wintertime when the land is frozen. And the reason for that is that the methane will migrate greater distances when the land is frozen. It'll migrate under the ice if there is any methane movement. In chatting with that engineer, he indicated that there would have been issues already acknowledged, but on the site, none have. So he is confident that there won't be any issue, but nonetheless, this further analysis will be conducted through a D4 study that will meet Ministry of Environment requirements. And we should have the results for that about this time next year. That study does not impact, of course, any of phases 1, 2, or 3 as proposed on the plan. So all those phases, and we won't get over there for at least 4 years probably anyway. So we've got lots of time to deal with that issue. Even if there is a matter, the engineer advised as well that there are mitigation measures that can be utilized to address that. With respect to the flex zone, we've used the flex zone in, as Suresh Singh indicated, in Bracebridge in particular, again, to address changes in market. And I thought I had provided Michael with a sample of that flex zone. If I haven't, I will forward one to him so he can see how that works. But Suresh was absolutely spot on when he indicated that both the county and the local municipality will be involved because there'll be changes in the plan of subdivision that will be required by red line revision or resubmission of part of the plan, as well as if it's a change from single units to row units, there'll be site plan control levied as well against it. So there'll be lots of opportunity for that kind of injection. What we try to do is to make it easy for us as well as the municipality and to reduce the number of steps that are required for what we consider to be relatively minor changes in the lotting framework within the plan of subdivision. And I might add that the lotting framework for the first phase, second phase, and third phase is fixed. The flex zone will only apply to part of the subsequent phases in the plan of subdivision as they're currently proposed. Now to go back to the standard provisions, I just wanted to add that in addition to what both Scott and Michael indicated, with 469 residential dwelling units being proposed on individual freehold lots in this development, 313 of them are proposed as single detached dwelling units, of which 252 will be attainable units, while the remaining 61 of those singles will be market value units. And those market value units will have slightly larger lots associated with them. And they're all in the western section of the development in the last phase of the development. The other 156 units are currently proposed to be row townhouse units, and all of those row townhouse units are proposed to be attainable dwelling units. There are 19 blocks on the plan of subdivision that are not proposed for residential development. 2 of them are very large blocks which relate to the hazard lands primarily that are shown on page, I believe, in the county report that Scott alluded to, where he showed the red areas, the white area, rural area, and the green area, which was the hazard area. None of those hazard designations or open space designations are proposed for change in this development. And the conditions of approval will have provisions in them that will ensure that no development extends beyond the top of bank as defined on the plan, that will go into the valley land associated with either the tributary of the Rocky Saugeen River or the Rocky Saugeen River itself. So we believe that all of that land, save and except for a very, very small part of it, will remain in its natural state. All the trees will be retained and they will be protected during the construction with what a special fence so that the heavy equipment, when it goes on site, will be prohibited from moving beyond that fence, and it's properly demarked on site. The small area to be disturbed has to do with the discharge from the new stormwater management facility, which is located on the west side of the site, immediately adjacent to and abutting the old landfill property. That area was chosen not because of the landfill site in particular, but it happened to be the lowest point of the property, and that's where the water will flow to for most of the phases after the development of phase 2, the stormwater. So there's a fan with cooling associated with it so that the water that's discharged from the stormwater management facility properly cools. It's the same type of facility that's The municipality currently owns and designed in the stormwater property that the municipality owns on the northern part of the northern part of the site at the current time. And there could be a small discharge from that. And that's the only area that there might be disturbance in one of the small blocks, but it's very, very small and very tiny. As Suresh mentioned, the subdivision will be developed in a number of phases. All of the phases 1 and 2 will be serviced by Stan Baker Boulevard. The third phase will be independently serviced by a new access off of Highway 10. We've already spoken with MTO about the design of that road and the need for a dedicated turning lane, as well as left turning lanes off of Highway 10 over a period of time. Those have all been incorporated into the base design for the plan of subdivision. When the fourth phase commences, there'll be a connection made to another road, Margaret Elizabeth Avenue, and also the connection for the water system will be made through the phase 4 lands as part of the phase 3 development in order to get potable water from the site into phase 3, which abuts the Highway 10 frontage. As well, 2/3 of the development, the sewage from the development will not go through the existing collection system serviced through Stan Baker Boulevard, but will be serviced through a new connection under Highway 10 that will go to the south in a gravity feed to the existing lagoon facility. The municipality's staff asked us to look at that. Originally, we were looking at a pumping station. So we reviewed that on their recommendation and determined that it was in fact possible. And we were working with the owner of that property and your staff to secure the necessary broadening of the easement so that we can put a sewer line in the existing municipal easement that is there over the property to gain access. It's a restricted access easement now, but it needs to be expanded so we can put a sewer line in there. The owners of Chapman's appear to be agreeable to that, and we'll be working, as I mentioned, with the municipality and they to ensure that that's put into place. We developed a concept plan as well as a plan of subdivision. The concept plan shows a number of things. It shows where the sidewalks are located. So there's a sidewalk on one side of all the roads in the plan of subdivision. It shows where new tree plantings will be proposed. It shows where additional setbacks are required from the Ministry of Transportation and Highway 10 and other areas within the plan of subdivision. And it also shows where existing vegetation will be protected on the site. So I encourage you to take a look at that concept plan. It was part of our submission. And if people want, public or councillors want to look at that, they're free to do so and comment upon same. We do that for a number of reasons, not just to show where those facilities will be, but also to ensure that the driveways that are associated with each of the units on the plan of subdivision will actually work. We've bumped into, not our developments, but we've bumped into other developments in some municipalities where they look great on paper, but as soon as you put them down on the ground, the driveways cross each other. The only way to ensure that that doesn't happen is to actually draft on the plan through the CAD system where the driveways are actually going to be located. In addition, where our sidewalks are proposed, we make sure that the setback from the sidewalk to the front of the garage in each of the units will accommodate car parking and that the cars don't have to block the sidewalk when the sidewalk is constructed. That again is shown as, and is integral to part of the concept plan. All the lots, of course, are to be serviced with municipal sewer, water, and storm facilities, and the general array of cable, bell, hydro, et cetera, the utilities that go into the development. In proposing the development, we did a functional servicing report with our engineers that looked at the sewer, water, storm, solid waste, utilities, street lighting, et cetera. All of that is initially reviewed in the functional servicing report. When individual plans are proposed for each of the phases in the development is illustrated on the draft plan of subdivision. More detail, of course, will be done with the design drawings for the actual sewer and water works for each of those systems, as well as the street lighting plans, etc. As part of that, and as background to it, a preliminary geotechnical assessment was done on most of the site, not all of it, but most of the site that would be subject to development. We did not do a geotechnical assessment on lands associated with the valley lands primarily, or with lands that we are not going to be developing. The traffic report was also commissioned, primarily because we knew we were going to be accessing or had to access Highway 10, but also because we wanted to make sure that the traffic that would be generated in the initial phases of our development using existing street infrastructure would not overburden that infrastructure. Our consultant came back and said that we couldn't have any more than 100 units off of Stan Baker, and that's what we've done. We're slightly under that by 1 or 2 units in the first 2 phases of the development. After that, we have to move to phase 3, which is accessed off of Highway 10, and then subsequent phases of the development will be serviced for traffic purposes from Stan Baker, Highway 10, as well as Margaret Elizabeth Avenue. We did an agricultural impact assessment. Wasn't really required or mandated by your staff. We did one anyway, and it confirmed that the impact on farm practices in the vicinity, it will be minimal and very unlikely that there'll be any impact whatsoever. We also did a phase 1 and 2 archaeological assessment through AMIC consultants, which confirmed that no archaeological resources were encountered on the site and that no further assessment of the property is required. That particular analysis has been approved by the province, submitted and approved by the province. Notwithstanding that, we are still working with the, as I mentioned, with the Ojibwe Nation, which has requested further information and further contact with us. So we're still working with that, notwithstanding that the report is approved by the province. An environmental impact study was conducted by Mikulski Nielsen Associates, which looked at a wide variety of interests, including endangered and threatened species on the site. And as I mentioned, all of those were addressed, including those that were mentioned in a letter from Shannon and Mr. Campbell. We will have our consultant contact them directly to speak to them about that, hopefully with either Scott or Michael on the line or both at the same time, so that the municipality is aware of that discussion. And we'll also be talking further with the Conservation Authority about the meadowlark matter on the site as well, and which we have a resolution and remedy to. Certificates of approval from Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks will also be required, of course, for the sewer and water works. In our opinion, an analysis was also done in the planning of all the documents, county official plan, local official plan, the provincial policy statement, section 5124 of the Planning Act, and we believe that we are in conformity or consistent with all of those provisions. We did, as mentioned by one of your councilors, hold an information session about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And we had good feedback from that. We took the opportunity subsequent to that to speak with one of the participants directly. She has submitted a further letter today explaining some of her concerns. And we will continue to work with her and Mr. Campbell in order to hopefully address those concerns properly. Some of those concerns are beyond our control. For instance, concern with the adequacy of school facilities in Markdale at the current time. That's up to the Board of Education, who have submitted a letter to the county indicating that they have no concerns with respect to this and suggesting their normal conditions of approval. But notwithstanding that, we're prepared to work further with the residents and the local school facilities or staff to ensure that the board is aware of the scale of the development over the impending decade and a half or so that it will take to construct our development and to work with everybody in that regard. I thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Well, thank you very much for that report. Any questions from members for Mr. List? Mayor McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. List. I don't know, did you miss anything? You seem to cover a lot of the bases there, so that's good. I guess the question around the school, certainly from more of a proactive approach that this council has been taking is working with the local school, I guess the trustee in our area, and with the school board itself. And the board is they would like to certainly increase that size, and we have certainly endorsed that as a council. I think that's maybe important for the listeners here as well. And I think that we will continue to advocate for that. As you're probably aware, a number of years ago, they looked at closing a school here in Markdale, and certainly the numbers we had to, the community sort of stood up and advocated that numbers were changing, and they are changing. And so I just want to make a comment that this council has been continuously trying to enlarge even the current approval, and even I think with conversations with the development lands that are right beside that as well. And so I think we even have a delegation maybe at the annual conference and as you know, or as we all know, we just went through a provincial election, and there's a new cabinet, and so we're going to continue to again advocate for that, because we see the growth is coming, and certainly right sizing the school in our community is much more, I think, appropriate than to build a school undersized and then add to it. So again, I just want to make those comments on that side, that to yourself and the comments that you received, and furthermore, certainly helping the community also advocate for that is also an important aspect as well. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? No. Okay. Mr. Singh, are there any other members of your team wanting to speak, or should we go to the public?
Bob, what are your thoughts? Maybe they address issues that as they come up, because I'm not sure that they would have a lot more to add than what you've specified already.
I think that's fair. I've tried to highlight briefly. I know that there have been some concerns about what an environmental impact statement actually does, or what matters were reviewed in that. And as I mentioned, with respect to those persons who have written, we'll further contact them to provide additional details with respect to those things, to try and deal with any concerns that they have. So in that regard, I think probably if our team members are prepared to respond to any questions the public may now put forward, it's probably the easier way to do it.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving on to the next step then. Is there anyone present who would like to make a submission in support of or opposition to this application, or have any questions or comments about this application? Clerk Martel, do we have anybody indicating that they'd like to speak?
Okay, so I just want to say, if there's anybody in attendance, please use the raise hand feature, and we'll give you the opportunity to speak. Oh, so Shannon, and I'm going to crucify this last name, Iadnardi.
Iadnardi.
Iadnardi, there we go.
Okay.
Move her over so she can speak. Sorry about that, Shannon. You should be able to unmute and turn your camera on now.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. And yeah, lots of questions. And thank you, Bob, very much. I look forward to having another conversation with you and possibly Angus, I guess, to address some of these other issues. So I'm going to hold off on some of my questions and maybe just leave them for that meeting then. I just, a few, I don't know, maybe comments or questions for council is, Mr. Singh, when you speak about slow absorption rates into our community, which is, you know, you're talking about the importance of that. So your development will be slow. Where are we at with the rest of our developments? Because I think I heard a comment tonight that we're expecting 1,200 dwellings in the next few years. Maybe somebody can clarify that.
I think the number that's being thrown out is about 1,000 units over the next decade, and that was going back a couple of years. We know that quite a few have already been built on the old Fairway number 2, and they're starting to build on Fairway number 1. But I'm thinking that other developments aren't the topic of this meeting, so it's I don't think we should be getting
This
into
is the time or the place. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
I can save my comments then.
Yeah.
Mayor McQueen, I'll probably send you another email then with this list of the comments that council can discuss at a later date, because there are quite a few concerns about, you know, healthcare issues and the absorption rates into our community. So maybe I'll just change gears then into a traffic question. Fairway Heights and Toronto Street, are there any recommendations for that particular intersection?
And who are
I
we?
don't think I saw any, so I'm just wanting to clarification on that.
Okay.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that if we can have our traffic consultant, John Northcott, who is should be available, he could probably address that and any other traffic concerns better than I.
And that was John Northcott?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Yes, I'm here through your chair to Shannon. So yeah, we did a traffic impact study to review the impact, and that was one of the intersections that we looked at, Fairway Heights and Toronto Street. And based on our analysis, there's no infrastructure improvements required of that intersection as a result of the proposed development that's going in. So our study looked at all the developments in the area. We looked at, we adjusted it to account for COVID. We adjusted it to account for summer traffic. We adjusted it to account for background traffic volume in the area. We looked at all that information, and along that section, we think, you know, when we're looking at the furthest horizon year out, 2031, that there is going to be more traffic along Toronto Street than there is now, and likely there would need to be a review of that so that council and the town can decide how they'd like to approach that section of road. But that's sort of beyond the scope of our study. So we didn't find any specific needs at that intersection based on the proposed development, but we certainly see in the long term that the town maybe needs to take a look at that section of road.
Absolutely, because honestly, speaking from a resident who drives past that multiple times a day, that intersection, it's our busiest gas station there, right? Our main gas station that comes out at that same intersection. And yeah, there's a lot of close calls that happen there. So yeah, it's definitely of concern for many residents in Markdale, that particular intersection, as well as our main lights, which the left-hand turning lanes then have been recommended to go in on Toronto Street, from my understanding.
The left turn lane is recommended at the site access on Highway 10.
Oh, so not on our, so there is no recommendations then for our current Main Street lights, Main Street and Toronto Street. There's no recommendations for that particular intersection either.
So the scope of our study didn't include that intersection, analysis of that intersection specifically. So our study was focused on the Fairway Heights intersection, Highway 10, and the site access intersection onto Highway 10. Yeah.
Okay, Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Shannon?
When you talked about sewer capabilities and us only having the capabilities to do the first few phases, after that, will residents absorb the cost? Like, will we see a tax increase? I've had many people kind of ask that question, and I don't know what the answer is to that. Will residents see a tax increase from sewer that needs to be put in the future?
Development pays for development. So we have a development charge, and that goes towards infrastructure that's required. And with the water and sewer, it's a user pay. So it's only the users that pay for what's required to run it, but no any upgrades will be paid through development charges.
So when our water bill, when we lived in town, increased substantially, what was that from?
Well, again, we're getting into things that aren't related to this application, but it was just very quickly, it was a harmonizing of rates. So all of the water systems, the expenses, income and expenses were all kind of put together, and one rate for all users in Grey Highlands. So that's why some rates went up and other areas rates decreased where they were very
like in
high.
Kimberley, where they were outrageous,
Yes,
and then it got absorbed across all of us. So we all took on the Kimberley issue. Okay, I will save the rest of my questions. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I will save the rest of my questions for emails.
Okay, and I'd just like to comment that I appreciate, quite often in planning hearings, I suggest for residents that have concerns about an application to talk to the applicants, and which is, I know is what's happening here, and I do appreciate that the proponents I appreciate the proponents' eagerness to work with residents and resolve concerns. So do let us know how things go with your concerns. So, okay, thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Clerk Martel, is somebody else wishing to speak?
I'm not seeing any other hands raised wishing to speak.
Okay. So then I am going to go back to council and ask if there are any other questions or comments to the presenters.
Chair Allen, that's Councilor Allwood. I had a question if I'm allowed.
Yeah, you've kind of disappeared. Oh, there we go. Okay, I've got you back. Okay, Councilor Allwood, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Allen. Through you to Mr. Northcote, the traffic consultant. I just wondered with the Highway 10 study whether there had been some talk of working with Chapman's on the sewer access and gravity feed, but I wondered whether the traffic study if there's been any conversation with, what could be potentially happening on the other side of Highway 10.
Mr. Northcott?
Sure. I'll kind of speak at a high level. We did sort of speak with Chapman early on in the process to see, to make sure, if we were lining up our road with any future development that they had in that area. We did the best to kind of inform them where they're going to go, and maybe Bob can jump in here, but I don't believe, we've showed them that, and they didn't have any issue with where we were proposing the entrance. So I think that's maybe as far as I can state it at now.
The only thing I could add to that would be that not with respect to layout or traffic, but with respect to sewage, Chapman's asked us to take a look at the depth of the proposed gravity feed that would go along the northwesterly boundary of their property in the existing municipal easement. to make sure that it would be properly sized to accommodate any future development on their property. And we are looking at that. The added cost of oversizing to accommodate future development on the Chapman's lands or anything in that quadrant of property is minimal. It's just an oversizing of the pipe. So instead of an 8-inch, we may propose a 10, but we haven't completed the engineering on that. We probably will know the answer to that in a few weeks. Chapman's is happy with that. So in general, I think that we have a great working relationship with the owners of Chapman's.
Okay, thank you for that. Any follow-up, Councillor Elwood?
No, thank you, Chair Allen. That was fine at this point. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Little, and then to the mayor.
Thank you, Chair Allen. Question to Planner Scott Taylor. The county has some design guidelines for this kind of development, and I'm just wondering, they're not stipulated, they're just guidelines. But I'm wondering what the process is between the county and these larger developments with implementation of some of the guidelines. And I think, some of them applied to low intensity development, where you've got soft surfaces for water to drain into, et cetera. That was one of them. So I'm just wondering if there's, what is the process for encouraging, I guess, those design guidelines? Thank you.
Planner Taylor.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Little. So yeah, the county has a number of documents. First and foremost, we have our official plan, which council is familiar with. But I think what Councillor Little may be referring to is two other documents we have. One is called the Healthy Development Checklist that we developed in partnership with the Grey Bruce Health Unit, as well as our friends in Bruce County. And another document we developed in partnership with some students from the University of Guelph, which is our subdivision guidelines. And so the county, in concert with your staff at the Municipality of Grey Highlands, have been working with the team at Loon Call since prior to the submission of the applications. And so one of the things that we highlight when we have those early meetings is we highlight what types of studies and reports will be needed, and we also highlight what types of resources are out there in terms of those guidelines. And so I'll say on my behalf, I've had the ability to work with Loon Call through their Meaford development as well, because the county had a role in approving parts of that development. And the team at Loon Call has been very receptive to looking at guidelines and working within any municipal engineering standards as well. So we're certainly eager to continue to explore that. And if there's any direction from municipal staff, then we're happy to explore that with Loon Call. But I would note that that the guidelines the county currently has are guidelines, so they're suggested best practices, but they're not enforceable in the same way that, say, a zoning bylaw would be. But that said, again, I'm repeating myself, but so far I found the Loon Call team very receptive to comments like that and to looking at any local documents that could ultimately make for a better development on their behalf.
Okay, thank you for that. Follow up, Councillor Little.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor McQueen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for all the comments tonight. And I think it's important to note that for some of the points that I think Shannon raises are probably genuine from the sense that Markdale has been sort of quiet for a lot of years. So I think there's some fair comments that need to be followed up on, and I'm encouraged by Suresh and Bob that you're doing that along with your information. And I certainly thank you to continue to do that. I don't know if there's a spot or somewhere where questions like that are asked so others can see that, or where that could be, because I think they come across very genuine, and I know traffic is something that's always been a bit of an issue in Markdale because of the busy Highway 10 at certain times of the year. So I know that is something that does sort of shake out there a little bit, but anyway, thanks for the comments that you're making, and continue to do that. And I just, again, I just wondered if there is a forum or a spot or these minutes or Shannon indicated that she will be sending myself and council other questions. So I guess then we'll be forward them on to, I guess, the planning department, I guess, in the sense of following up with that. So I just want to make sure there's no closed loop, but it's an open loop as we continue to move through this process. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Singh, do you have any on your website where I'm thinking of the information meeting that was 4 or 5, 6 weeks ago? Is that somewhere that people can look at what was asked, what the answers are, and then follow up things from this meeting?
We actually don't have it loaded on our website electronically. We have an info at email, and we've received requests for information on that in that manner. And then we always respond and engage, typically either by email or by phone at that point. So info@lcdg.ca will get anybody to the right place.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to ask one last time if council has any last comments or questions. I'm not seeing, and I'm also going to give the public one last chance. Clerk Martell, has anybody else indicated that they'd like to make a comment or question?
There's only one other public member besides Shannon still left in attendance, and I'm not seeing that person raising their hand to speak.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank council and staff and the presenters and the public that have made comments, asked questions. This is the forum for that, to get information and have concerns addressed. So again, just want to thank everybody. And my last bit here, as there's no further discussion, this application, well, will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration, but this, I'm sure, is going to be down the road a ways. So there's lots to happen before that. Okay, I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned at 7:19. Thanks again, everybody. Good night.
Have a lovely evening. Night.